In this video, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into classification models. So I wanted to start by reminding you of the things that we did on our first day studying classification models. We were looking at something called a bag of words model, which was taking some sort of review of a product, breaking it up into each individual word, and going through that sentence, looking at words and attributing them either positive values or negative values, and ignoring some things like the, is, it, a, all of those things. But we were really looking for these descriptive words that we had strong connotations as either positive or negative, and all we were doing was counting the number of specific positive words, counting the number of specific negative words, and then taking a sum of those values, number of positive words versus number of negative words. And if we got a value in the end, total in the end that was positive, we said, yeah, let's call that a good review. And if we got a number in the end that was negative, we classified that as a bad review. But there are many problems as we began to uncover last time with the bag of words model. First of all, one question we might ask is, well, how do we know what words to use? We know as people that words like is, the, are unimportant. We know that words like great and good and awesome and fabulous are positive words. We know that awful, terrible, horrible are negative words. But how do we teach a computer to discover those things on its own? And also, how do we teach a computer to deal with all the very many nuances of the English language? So for example, one thing that we might see is sarcasm, where somebody is saying something like, it was so good, and then in parentheses maybe they write eye roll, or they put little stars around things in order to indicate that it's sarcasm. How do we deal with people who say things like, it was so not good, without we see the good and we attribute that as a positive thing without looking at the word that came before it? All of those are complications to the bag of words model. And another thing that we're starting to notice is that some positive words are more positive than others. When somebody uses the word good, it's really hard to tell if they're saying, it was good, or it was really good. That's sentiment that's really difficult to pick up in text. But if somebody says, it was fabulous, it was wonderful, it was one of a kind, those kinds of expressions should maybe count for more in our model than it was good. And so what we're looking is to come up with some things we can do to extend this basic idea to handle some of these complications. Perhaps the easiest adaptation that we're going to look at is to add weights to the coefficients. So what we were doing in the bag of words model is we had these words that we were looking for in the review, and we were just counting whether or not they occurred. What we can do is we can go through and say, maybe V1 here is going to represent the number of times the word great appears in the review. Maybe we want to put a number on that. Maybe we want it to be a little bit more than 1. And then if V2 here is counting the number of goods that occurs in the text, maybe we can put a coefficient on that. It's maybe a little less than 1. And so in some sense, the V sub i's in this equation, in this score equation, are counting the number of occurrences of the word, and the A sub i's are almost like a cost of that word. How important is that word to us when we're doing this computation? And in that way, we'll be able to count more extreme words with higher value than words that are a little bit more neutral. So that's where we're going to start with our model, and I've given a little example of what that's going to look like right here. I've called the A sub i's weights in this model, and we could see that a word like disappointed, which is very negative and extreme, could maybe have a very high weight, but given this negative association, and then a word like great would have a larger weight than a word like good. Bad might be negative, but worst would be a larger negative number. So that's the first change we're going to make.